Good day, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Warframe guide, and today we're going to be doing an Equinox Affinity farming guide. It's a very specific niche kind of guide, but it's something that I think would be quite interesting to show. Although there are things like Elite Sanctuary Onslaught and Onslaught that you can do with Affinity farming, this is another avenue you can take which requires a bit of finesse, but can be incredibly fun to do. So, what is Affinity farming? Well, Affinity is the stuff that makes your level go up, and it's also the stuff that goes towards your focus tree. Now, there's a certain mechanic within the game called a stealth modifier that allows you to duplicate the amount of affinity and focus you're earning. So what you have to do to get this to work is you need to equip a weapon with a focus tree on it. So for example, my Galatine has a focus tree on it. So everything I kill with this weapon will earn me focus. This in turn will also cause a focus orb to spawn in the mission that I go into. When this is picked up, you earn focus at a very exaggerated rate, and this is then duplicated by your stealth modifier. We'll show you how this works in a moment, but just to show you what you need to start this, first of all, you're going to need an Equinox modded for some duration with a bit of range on there as well. This is a generalized build that I showed off in my Equinox guide at the start of my YouTube stuffs, and you can copy this as you wish, but just bear in mind the focus is on range and duration with some efficiency. In terms of the weapon, you want a high base damage weapon with enough power to be able to kill something in one hit. Specifically because with the way this works, you need to single hit a target so that the target doesn't wake up from its sleep state. And this can also be done with Ivara as well. However, we're going to specifically look at Equinox because it's the one I have practice with. And I personally like Equinox a lot as well with this. So, the modding for the Galatine, it's entirely personal preference. Just make sure it does enough damage in a single hit to kill outright. There's a couple of different types of builds you can go for this, but just make sure it kills in one hit. Anything of this nature will sort of do. It's all about base damage though. Now, the mission that you're going to want to do for this is Adaro on Sedna. I find that Adaro works quite nicely because it's a Grineer map, meaning the EXP an enemy will give you is going to be quite high. As well as that, there's no sensors or scanners that can otherwise screw you over by detecting you. So we're going to load in and then you'll see what we do. So, now, into the mission. Couple things to note before you start. What you're doing here is you want your melee weapon out, and you need to be looking for the at your minimap. Using enemy radar can be very beneficial here so that you can see the enemy outside. And you can see where the enemy are more likely. Now, if you've watched my Equinox guide, you'll probably already know how Equinox works, but in night mode, your 2 acts as a sleep, and this can be cast through walls. And so what you can do is you can literally just circle yourself around and actively crowd control the enemy around you. Now, this is all about speed. The more you do this, the better you'll get. And what you're looking for is the stealth modifier buff up in the top right there. This is a buff that will stack up to 500% when you kill something whilst unnoticed. If you get detected by something, there's a little gimmick you can do here where you go into operator mode and kill the thing that saw you in operator mode. That way you don't lose your stealth modifier. So if these guys see me, for example, hello boys, hello, hello, hello. So if I go into operator mode and kill them now, they've technically detected my operator, but my frame will still maintain its buff. So that's the idea. You're stealthing things so that they can be executed to then progress on through the mission. And if you do get detected and you know that these enemies are not going to count towards your stealth modifier anymore, you'll then just clear them up and carry on through the mission until you get to an area where they're no longer detecting you. This does require a bit of finesse and a bit of practice, but with time, this can be a very efficient way of earning some focus. So, once again, the way this works, you stealth someone, you execute them, and then you gain the stealth kill affinity bonus, which then counts towards focus as well. Now, what you're doing is you're waiting for the affinity orb or the focus orb to spawn, which will be the yellow... It'll be the yellow orb that appears. Now, the yellow orb will appear on a timer. However, if you are actively killing things, these orbs will spawn quicker. So what you want to do is you want to kill things until this orb spawns. And it should spawn anytime now. And when it does, you want to go and grab it. And this is where the RNG factor comes into play. You want to make sure you have enough energy so that you can be consistently casting. And you're hoping that in an ideal situation, you want the orb to appear as you're about near a bunch of enemies. So here's the orb. We're going to go ahead and grab it, and then we're going to go back and kill those dudes behind us, whilst maintaining the 500 energy buff. So we're just going to start munching through them. And then everything we kill now is earning a large amount of focus. We just want to make sure we don't lose that focus multiplier. So this isn't the most optimal way of farming focus, but you can get lucky where you run into a large clump of enemies and then earn an absolute metric crud ton of focus in a single run. The most focus I have ever earned whilst doing this was 80,000 in a single orb. And this is all about efficiency. The quicker you are, the more efficient you are at doing this, the more focus you will earn. And then if you do have a Kavat with you, if you have a Smeeta Kavat, it's actually worth bringing your Smeeta Kavat with you, because the Smeeta Kavat can then give you a charm buff. So when I said don't bring a pet earlier, I actually should have said that don't bring any pet other than a Smeeta Kavat. A Smeeta Kavat can give you a charm, which can double your potential focus income. So you can also subsequently use, oops, I just decided to go into my day mode because I'm an idiot apparently. You can also use boosters to duplicate this affinity as well, but even without boosters, this is still a very effective way of earning focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead, and we're going to show you what you can achieve with a Smeeta Kavat and with a maximized chunk of enemies that will spawn with the Smeeta Kavat. Okay, so now we're going to go through this in the way that you would normally do it. You would make sure you have enough energy to start with, and then you're going to start circling around, making sure everything is crowd controlled, whilst looking at your mini-map to make sure that there's nothing, so that you know where the enemy are. Now, the faster you go through this, the more efficient you are at this, the more likely you are to earn focus. And obviously, with the focus cap being the way it is at 250,000 per day, before you start having a degenerative amount of focus being earned, this can be a nice little way of earning focus. Now, the reason this definitely is by no means the most effective way of earning focus. You've got Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, you've got Eidolons that can give you focus. The thing about this way of farming focus is it's very intuitive and very fun and very active, and it's reliant. And the better you are at it, the more focus you earn. So you're going to start blasting your way through. You'll be killing things just to get the orb to first spawn like that, and once the orb spawns, you're then going to hope for your Smeeta Kavat to be around to get that extra buff. So we're going to open up this with a Cypher just to make life easier for ourselves. We're going to grab the orb, and then we're going to go back and kill all the dudes that are just behind us. The idea here is we want to do this as quickly as possible and focus on the ones that we CC'd first, whilst maintaining that stealth modifier. Remembering which order you sleep things in, or slept things in, is very vital, as that will be a big defining factor as to which ones are going to wake up first. And then sometimes you can get, if you get, the luck comes in as to the spawn location of the enemy. If you know that if you can time out the spawn of an orb to a point where you're going into an area with a lot of new enemies in, where they're all clumped up and there's a lot of them, you can chain this focus to an exponential rate where you'll earn infinitely more focus. And sometimes you'll earn a small amount, sometimes you'll earn a large amount. It's all about maximizing your potential income. So right there, we had 14,000 for a very few amount of enemies, and bear in mind that wasn't that many of them in the first place. If we had done this slightly more efficiently, where we would have had these guys included, that probably could have been about 25,000 focus quite easily. So would you want to do this in place of other focus methods? Probably not. This is definitely a bit more effort required, but it's a lot of fun. And you can additionally do this with Ivara using Ivara's Sleep Arrow with a very similar method. Personally, I don't use Ivara too much, so it's not something I've had too much practice with. I do know that there are people who've done it with Ivara as well. I feel like Ivara might be a bit slower, potentially. But we're going to keep going. We're going to try and burn through this entire session. And if you do this effectively, you can get an entire Exterminate mission like this done in about 5 to 10 minutes-ish. So that's, you could potentially get up to 80 to 100,000 focus per run. Every 10 to 15 minutes until you've reached your cap. So you always want to be looking ahead and spamming your 2. So as you can see, you can sort of tell this is something that does require a fair bit of focus, whilst also paying attention to what's around you. And this is where the range comes in handy as well, because the more range you have, the further ahead you are able to CC the enemies. The range also then increases the size of your crowd control, the actual burst of the crowd control, should I say. So when you actually cast your 2 on something, it'll have a radius around it, and anything within that radius also gets crowd controlled. You can also use Calm and Frenzy, I believe that's the one. If there's an augment that allows you to spread your your calm and frenzy between other enemies. So this is it's something else that could potentially save your backside if something wasn't crowd controlled before you noticed. Execute that guy. Gonna move on. Currently running out of time. That wasn't the most effective. Oh, got his last second. Excellent. So that was 34,000 focus. That's a lot of focus. That is... already I've earned almost a quarter of my daily focus just by doing this one mission. Now, does it require luck? Yes, most certainly. But this is a good example as to how effective you can be whilst learning something new. And in my eyes, when it comes to Warframe, there are so many interesting things you can attempt to make things a bit more interesting for yourself. And this is definitely one of them. And obviously you can then get invaded by a faction which will completely give you over, but hey ho, that's just the joy of it. But this is a very interesting way of learning focus. It's also a very good way of leveling up items. For example, whatever weapon you're not using to kill things, you could bring in another couple of weapons that require leveling, and you'll pretty much max your level in maybe 1 or 2 runs. And this is an incredibly adaptive way that you can then have a bit of something else to focus on. You can also use other focus farming methods. You've got Banshee farming and Hydron, but that's maybe something for another video. For the time being, this method of farming focus is incredibly enjoyable once you get good at it. It does require the understanding of how it works and how the stealth modifier plays in. In terms of the stealth modifier, you just want to make sure you're keeping your stealth modifier at 500%. So here's a large squad of enemies. This is probably going to be hopefully a good amount of focus. And the important factors here to remember are: you want to one-shot, you want to make sure that you're spamming your sleep at every opportunity, you want to make sure that they do not detect you, and you want to keep your energy up. The quicker and more effectively you can do this, the more effectively you will earn focus. So there, even without a charm, that was 16,000 focus, and that wasn't even an optimal slide through as well. Using a weapon with a quick attack speed whilst having high base damage can be incredibly potent here as well. And it's worth giving it a try. If you found this guide helpful and you've tried it yourself, I'd love to know the amount of focus you've earned by doing this, or just whether you found this useful at all. And if you want to see more guides or anything of that nature, please leave a comment down below as to the sort of thing you would like to see. If you want to come and check this sort of stuff out that we do in our daily Twitch streams, then there'll be a link to my Twitch stream down below as well. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Let's see what we can get from this last focus orb, and then maybe we'll try the other focus methods in another video. So thank you very much for watching, guys. If you have enjoyed yourself, we will see you all in the next video. Ta-ra!